Last week, we reviewed genocide, other mass atrocities, and what responses humanity could conceivably have in response to genocides. We talked about humanitarian intervention, responsibility to protect, and how difficult they were. Now, fortunately, they are not our only options. We have also established in the 21st century the International Criminal Court. And this week, we have the first prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Moreno Ocampo, with us. Here's what he has to say about the new demand for global justice and for institutions.
Distance in time and distance in space reduce your moral ability. Therefore, now with instant communication, we suddenly are connected with what's happening in Syria today. And we are seeing the killing in Syria today. And then people believe that should not happen. So, at the same time, there are no institutions to deal with the problem, so that's why they're still in killings. So, what the new world, 21st century, is about global communication and global citizenship. I see this particularly in the young people. No? It's a new community, 18, 15. They are a community. So, they don't care about borders or race or religions. They care about the same people of their age. So, in this sense, yes, the world is changing. And the problem is a global demand for institutions dealing with the problems. Because it's no more an individual issue. It's a collective action issue. And that's why the moral dilemma for the world is collective action. Because you don't react when something wrong happens in long distance. It's a long story. It's an old story about the Chinese Mandarin. It was repeated for centuries by different writers, and Per Goriot is there. And the story is about you receive 2 magic bells. Each time you ring the bells, you get whatever you want. But at the same time, no one knows, but you know, an old Chinese Mandarin died in China. So your moral dilemma is, what goods are you prepared to just resign? You will not get them. What would be your constraints to avoid that an old Chinese Mandarin that you don't know died in China? In Per Goriot, the French novel, one of the characters is worried because he said, today I killed 30 Chinese Mandarin. So in the past, who cares about Chinese Mandarin? You don't know, we don't care. Now we are connected, and this problem became more relevant.
This brief video of Ocampo is from the Carnegie Council on Ethics in International Relations. And in the interest of full disclosure, I should mention that I'm a Global Ethics Fellow at the Carnegie Council, an institution that I have a great deal of regard for. I think Ocampo makes 2 important points. One is about the centrality of the youth in the global quest for justice. You will see that he also brings in his students into the discussion in the next lecture. And I do agree that there is a generational cleavage, there is a generational constituency for things that have to do with global justice and global civics. His second point is the connection between the demand for justice and being aware. And increasingly we are more aware. It seems like everything that's taking place under the uninterrupted gaze of humanity. In the past, governments could have hoped for their human rights violations not being noticed. Today, that is not possible. And conscience has been described as being cognizant of other people's gazes. And that gaze now is omnipresent. It's all around us all the time. Now, Ocampo, in his lecture for the Global Civics Academy, tries to distinguish between things that we care so much about that we find national guarantees insufficient. And these are things that we want global rules for and global institutions for. And here's what he has to say.
We are here because Hakan Atinay, working with the Brookings Institute, is working on this idea of global civics. The idea that there are global citizens. And they produce a book. Now, they are trying to do an seminar, education online. And they asked me to try to present the relation between international justice and global citizens. And it is very interesting because they produce, in addition to the book, and you can see it in the web, is a video. And the video presents very clearly the idea that this global citizen idea is supported by different traditions, different religions. I love it when I read an expert from China, Su Jingdong. I hope I say the name rightly. But he said something very nice. He said, our ancestors told us that every humble individual has an obligation or a responsibility to the well-being of the rest of the world. And it's a lovely moral concept. The issue is how to transform it into reality. So that is the dilemma. Another, in this video, Miroslav Volf, who is the director of the Yale Center for Faith and Culture, further developed this idea. He agreed every individual has responsibility for every human being. But he said, do we feel that responsibility? Do we assume that responsibility? And more specifically, and that for me is an interesting question, how do we assume concretely a responsibility in the world that is too big for any of us to take care of? That for me is the real issue. Yes, we like the idea, we are connected with the world, and in fact, I believe in particular young people your age, you're born global. For you, what happens somewhere in other parts of the world, your age is your community. So I believe this issue who was less clear in my generation is much, much more clear now because the internet is helping you to connect each other. But the issue who remain for me is how we assume this responsibility, how we can do something for that. And for me, that is the idea to have rights and political institutions protecting the rights, because that's what we learn to do. No, it's not just not to be killed by a police in the street. It's not just a moral imperative. We have a right, and normally, in most of the states, this right will be protected and enforced when someone violates the right. And Hakan Altinay present this clearly in this video. He say, okay, global civics, it's presenting the need for a new framework. In an increasingly interdependent world, we need a new framework. That's what he say. And then he asks, what are the responsibilities that we take on? What are the rights that we are ready to claim? And that is for me the concept to discuss with you. And I like the idea that we're NYU, you're students from all over the world, and then you can present to me what happened to you. For instance, first question for you. Tell us, you believe that it's possible that in your countries or here, the police just go to your house and abduct you and then you just disappear? It's possible for you?
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Well, my father's from Eritrea.
Do you live there?
I don't live there. He lives there.
And that could happen in Eritrea?
I think so. It's murky what comes out of there, but it's probably.
And you live in New York now?
Yes.
And it could happen in New York to you?
I didn't think so, but I've been recently convinced that maybe it could.
What about you? Where are you from?
I'm from Iowa, United States.
And you live in Iowa for how many years?
Lived there until I was 18 years old.
It's possible in Iowa that the police abduct you in your house and then you disappear?
I don't think so.
You feel who will protect you?
The local police.
The police will not do that, simply.
They would protect. Yeah, they wouldn't do it.
And in New York, police is worse?
I similarly feel pretty
Protected,
safe.
pretty safe. And if a crazy policeman do that, you feel you have, who will protect your rights?
I feel like there are a great deal of systems, checks and balances along the way to assure that my rights are protected here.
Where are you from?
I'm from Venezuela.
How long are you living in New York?
6 years.
You feel if in Venezuela the police can abduct you and then you disappear?
Yes.
Could happen.
It happens.
It happens.
Yeah.
And who will protect you? The Venezuelan judge?
No, we don't have faith in the judiciary to protect you.
And how do you feel in New York? You feel safe?
Not really.
Neither.
No.
Why not?
The New York Police Department has this stop and frisk checks, and they're arresting and detaining young people of color all over New York City.
Because your color.
Yeah.
And nationality is influential or not?
Yes.
When?
Especially immigrants are being put into the system and put in detention routinely.
Because you are from a different country, you can be abducted here. That you believe. Happened to you.
It hasn't happened to me, but it has. There are many stories of my clients in the immigration clinic that has happened to, and many people around the city.
Where are you from?
From Canada.
It's possible that in Canada police abduct you and you disappear?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Canadian police will not do that.
I don't think so. I've never heard of any stories of that, and I feel very safe. And we have a Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and it holds people to account.
Yeah, and New York, how many years have you living here?
I've only been here this year.
And you feel similar safety or less or more?
Fairly safe, but a little less so.
Less than Canada?
Yes.
Why?
I mean, they have Guantanamo Bay here, and I feel that because of certain counterterrorism measures, that there's more suspicion, and that the executive is willing to overlook police and CIA and other officials from doing things that I don't think would be allowed, definitely in Canada.
But in your normal life, you feel protected here too. So,
I feel safe.
yes. What about you?
I'm from Ethiopia, and I've lived other places like Egypt, Kenya, France.
You live in all these places.
Yeah.
Can you explain the differences? How you feel in Ethiopia? You feel protected in Ethiopia with national police and the national judges?
No, I mean, when I'm there, I feel relatively safe, but I would.
Why? Because the family, because the police, because the national authorities? Who protect you in Ethiopia?
I don't think anyone would protect me. I don't think I am particularly of interest.
You're not the target. You're lucky.
Yeah.
And what
No.
about Egypt?
Egypt, I did not feel safe.
Eh?
In Egypt, I didn't feel safe.
In France?
In France, I felt safe.
Yeah.
Too. In Kenya, I didn't feel safe.
In US?
And then in the U.S., I don't feel safe.
You don't feel safe here in US. Why not?
I think mostly because I'm an immigrant, I'm a woman of color, and then also the things that I study or have studied. I think, like she said, because of counterterrorism measures, because of stories I've heard, I think it's very possible for citizens just living their everyday lives to one day be caught up in a situation that they didn't know and be abducted from their homes.
By national authorities?
Yeah.
Representing national state can protect you in some countries, not so well in other countries. And that could be a model. Okay, let the national system to develop. But alternative it's possible to have global rights and globally enforce it. That could be an alternative. And in fact, I'd like to show you a video because it's interesting because for you, rights is something you born and it's normal. And when you're missing the rights, you feel it's something wrong. I like that because it's new. Because in fact, in the 15th century, you have no rights. The count or the duke or the king could do whatever he wants with you. And you can say nothing. So the idea that we have some rights that the authority had to respect is new. It's consolidated by the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Both established that formally, and they develop institutions to protect you. And of course, it's a struggle because in the American, in 1776 or 1789, they were still women, for instance, have no rights. Slaves have no rights, so was limited. The concept was there, but for the last centuries, we're expanding these ideas. And interestingly, this developed a new world, a world who produced industrial revolution and then keep moving. And this create, after the Second World War, it was a moment where the world understood how important it is to protect global rights. And I have to show you that because, interesting, Eleanor Roosevelt was key on that because Eleanor Roosevelt was the widow of the former President Roosevelt, and she was at UN preparation, and she was chairing a committee, and that's why she was the only woman. When you see the films of these UN discussions, the only woman is Eleanor. That's why I think it's great that she presented this idea of the Declaration of Human Rights, where basically we established this idea not just for the national system, we established this idea globally. Let me show you that.
We stand today at the threshold of a great event, both in the life of the United Nations and in the life of mankind. This Universal Declaration of Human Rights may well become the international Magna Carta of all men everywhere. We hope its proclamation by the General Assembly will be an event comparable to the proclamation of the Declaration of the Rights of Man by the French people in 1789, the adoption of the Bill of Rights by the people of the United States, and the adoption of comparable declarations at different times in other countries.
Okay, that's the goal she put. International Magna Carta of all men everywhere. It's a great goal, not yet there. For instance, it's a growing, we have a lot of rights, but the issue for me is if we are not just talking about moral issues, if we are talking about rights, the rights require that you have a remedy when your rights are violated. It's not just that you believe in a moral principle, you have the right to do something and then your right will be reestablished. And the idea, so all this Magna Carta, global Magna Carta, is nice as a principle, but still a moral principle. Even if it's a document signed by, as a treaty, it's still a moral principle because there are no institutions to protect that right. For instance, I believe it's a huge evolution on the idea women have rights because few decades ago, women have no rights. And more women have rights. But depend on different countries. It's still a national issue. So for instance, the idea that you can select your husband, if you decide to be married, you can select your husband. You believe it's a global idea? No, it's not a global idea. In many traditions, it's wrong. They believe the family will define with whom you married. And it's a national right. You believe it would be good to have a global organization to change this? Can be changed at the global level? What do you think?
I think maybe in the long term, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
You don't believe it could be possible. Because the issue is, it's not just about right. The right has to be connected with life. So suppose you have a global family court saying it's wrong to force women to be married. Okay, suppose this court is working and you can enforce that. And the lady in the country who does not believe that got the right. What happened with her family? So she married with someone who she selected, but after how would be life? So I think there's tension between this idea of global principles that both of us agree, because I suppose, I don't know if you are in favor of marriage, but I suppose you are, if you decide to be married, you have to select the partner. But that is not yet a global thing. Other than that, I went to Libya after the end of I was involved in the Gaddafi investigation. And I went to Libya, and after I was visiting Misrata, and it's crazy. Misrata was surrounded by tanks. You see all the tanks. When you arrive to the city, you see all the tanks destroyed. These people were fighting for their life. And they showed me the faces of the people who died. in the struggle. I thought, look, it's incredible because I knew about this event, but I never saw the faces. So thank you for showing me the faces. But what I miss here are the pictures of the girls who were raped. I understand you cannot show the picture because in Libya it's a very traditional society. They feel it's such a huge crime that they can expose even the face of the victim. So I told him, look, I understand you cannot expose the faces, but we cannot marginalize these girls again. So what you're doing? And he said, oh, we have a human rights program to protect the girls. Wow, how it's working? And he explained to me, the problem is, when the girls are raped, they lost their virginity. And because they lost their virginity, they cannot be married. And they will be isolated for life. So what we decided is to marry them. We invite people to marry them. And to show leadership, I married two. I had two wives previously, then I married two. And he was so proud of his effort. And for me, it was a shocking moment. It was, oh, he's so proud, and probably it's very brave what he's doing. But I was thinking, if I'm a 15-year-old girl who was abducted, raped by Gaddafi forces, now my best option is to be the third wife or the fourth wife of this man who's 45, I never met before. And I feel, okay, maybe it's the best option for her, but it's difficult for me to consider this is a great idea. Should I interfere with that? Should I say, oh, it's wrong? No, I cannot say that. And this case for me showed me how difficult it is to define what is global and should be globally enforced and what is nationally enforced. Because probably in Libya they can discuss this tradition and they can change the tradition. But can we present as a right of the government to select? It will be difficult because no consensus. Even if we impose, will be an foreign imposer. So we should not do that. On the other hand, what is global is the idea that Gaddafi cannot send troops to rape massively girls. That is global. And they agree on that. They agree, and they were very grateful for the investigation with against Gaddafi and stopping the crimes. So they are very grateful for our intervention to stop the crimes, because the quest for justice is global, and they don't like that. But how to implement justice is more national, it's more complicated, in particular for the victim reparations. And then, that for me, if we are talking about global civics, we have to understand, yes, it's a global movement, but if you are talking about not just moral issues, you are talking about the rights issues, you need institutions to protect your rights. And national institutions will be different in different countries. And then, yes, because what you told me is in Eritrea and Ethiopia and in Venezuela, the national system is not working well to protect some right of freedom or protection against abductions. But also you saw me in the US also could be a problem if you are connected with immigration problems or terrorist problems. So we need to keep working the national system to make them better. For me, the real legal debate is to define what should be a concern and a responsibility of the national systems and what should be the responsibility of the global system. What are the rights that should not just be protected by a nation, should be humanity has to protect it. That is for me the debate of the future. And in fact, I'd like to show you a second video, and it's up to the same time. It's exactly the time of Eleanor Roosevelt.
The chief prosecutor. The privilege of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored. because it cannot survive their being repeated. That four great nations, flushed with victory and stung with injury, stay the hand of vengeance and voluntarily submit their captive enemies to the judgment of the law is one of the most significant tributes that power has ever paid to reason. This tribunal, while it is novel and experimental, is not the product of abstract speculation, nor is it created to vindicate legalistic theories. This inquest represents the practical effort of four of the most mighty of nations, with the support of 15 more, to utilize international law.
So, Jackson presents, for me, the idea in a very good terms. He said, it's not just about moral issues or legal issues, it's about survival of humanity. And of course, he did in a moment when everyone understood that after Hitler fell. However, after Nuremberg, there was no intentions to implement this idea. There was not really commitment to establish global institutions to protect the global rights. Eleanor Roosevelt showed, yes, we declared the rights, but the system to implement the right was not based on this idea. The UN system is based on the national security in the UN Security Council, where 5 states have the right to. Security Council is in charge of peace and security in the world, so in this sense, it's an institution to protect the global rights. But there are 5 of the states in the Security Council who have the right to stop activities with no reason, based on their own idea. Imagine a court, a Supreme Court in your countries, with 15 judges, and 5 of them have the right to decide whatever they want, and say that. Oh, this case is good, but I don't like this case because my brother has a friend who is from the same family, so we suspend it. No. That is crazy in a Supreme Court, and it's exactly what is happening in the UN Security Council. And because the system, the right or wrong were not the issue. Because after Nuremberg was the Cold War, the communism threatening the capitalism and democratic system. So right or wrong was irrelevant. Everything was about, are you my enemy, are you my friend? In Latin America, the famous statement from an ambassador who say, talking about Somoza, the dictator from Nicaragua, say, he's a son of bitch, but he's our son of bitch. So we don't care if right or wrong. We care, are you my friend or are you my enemy? So all the idea, if you are kidnapped by my enemy, I will protect you. If you are kidnapped by my friend, I'm sorry. You are a casualty. I'm sorry. So that was the model. And for me, living in Latin America, we suffered that. Because in my country, yeah, the Cold War was cold in Europe and US. It was not cold in the South. In Buenos Aires, in Argentina, 20,000 people disappeared as a consequence of the Cold War, because basically Cuba and Russia were training the guerrillas people in my country, and then US and France were helping the army to control them. And the system was the guerrillas were hiding in the society, and then, because that was Mao, the leader of China, say that a guerrilla leader had to move as a fish in the water. So the concept was the guerrilla had to move in society as a fish in the water. So hidden. So use society to be hidden. So the consequence was the state forces were just taking pieces of water to see if was a fish there. That was the consequence. So it was heavy in our countries. And that's why the end of the Cold War make a change. Because the end of the Cold War was like, okay, we have these values, our democratic and capitalist values are the global values, we do that. Changing the dynamic just before move the Cold War, because in the Security Council you can find interesting information. For instance, we talk now about the killings in Cambodia. Cambodia was a massive crime against humanity. And it's funny, Vietnam, supported by Russia, was willing to stop the killings. And who stopped them? China and US. China and US stopped them. So, because the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So basically, yes, today Cambodia is wrong. In those days, Cambodia was okay because it was fighting with China, with Vietnam and Russia. So all the Cold War changed completely our vision of the problem. That's why the good thing now, the Cold War is over, we can see right or wrong. And that's why, for me, it was interesting, after the end of the Cold War, when the Balkans started, the conflict in the Balkans started, basically, people in Europe were shocked that could see concentration camps, like in the Nazi time, white people, very skin. Then they had to do something. And they went back to Nuremberg. And they created this tribunal for Yugoslavia. And next year was Rwanda genocide. 1 million people died. We did nothing. You know, US refused to bomb the radio antennas who were proposing to kill Tutsis out of respect of freedom of media. So we confuse our mind, what is global, what is national, so instead to destroy the antennas and try to reduce, we're thinking, oh, how to respect this right. Of course, no one wants to be involved in different country conflicts, so basically we did nothing. And 1 million people die. Then, because we have this tribunal, a global tribunal for Yugoslavia, we cannot ignore Rwanda, so we add Rwanda to the tribunal. And this was 1994. And as a consequence, the idea to debate a general court was there. And then 1994 to 1998, we have a big debate. And then the debate was basically about to have a court, but the meaning of the court, what's the meaning of the court? Because US was the main supporter of the idea. Like at the court, like Yugoslavia and Rwanda, Security Council decide. So that means that I can decide where to go and where not to go. So it's a court who respect this idea, the big country had decision. But because in great part of what happened in the Cold War, Africa, Latin America, and Europe say no. So they adopted the idea of the International Criminal Court, but they went further that US idea. They would say, no, it's a court who's independent. We are having rule of law here. And that's why, in this way, we finally got something which is globally and protecting our rights. Okay? So yes, if you're a victim of torture as a part of a crime against humanity, and your country is a member of the ICC, yes, you can go beyond your national authorities. You can go to a global system. Took 60 years, and it's about genocide and crimes against humanity. So that for me shows how slow is the evolution, no? Because you see, in the cell phones started in 1988, internet at the beginning of the 90s, and now it's global. So it took less than 2 decades to change the world. The first time someone was talking about the need to have an international criminal court was in 1873. One of the founders of the Red Cross was saying we need an international criminal court to implement the rights of war, to control war crimes. Because he said no state wants to prosecute its own soldiers. So it took 130 years from the idea to institution. And so going back to the basic concept, okay, yes, the moral idea of global citizen is right. Transforming global ideas from moral principle to civil, to rights, is a huge step. We have as Eleanor Roosevelt say, the Magna Carta of the world, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But the problem is we have no institution to support them. And so for me, the next challenge is to build these institutions. And I hope this course help that to that. Because basically, what I see is the print created a lot of institutions. The print created people thinking and discussing Kant and Rousseau and Locke and Bentham discussing how to define new way to interact, to respect right, to have political institutions. The print promoted this idea. Westphalia became important because, well, okay, it was a system to protect individuals and establish a global permanent peace. And then after that was the American Revolution, the French Revolution with rights, and then political institutions, and then industrial revolution. My feeling is we are living in a new era where on this basis, we have a new revolution, industrial revolution moving forward, the internet system, but we have no thinkers. We have no institutions. We are based on the old institutions to protect these new rights. And that's why I believe it's a fascinating time to be a lawyer. And I like the idea to have this group of people who represent millions of people who will watch. You are from all the continents. You are discussing in different ways. It's not just about one country. We are testing idea how we can move to have a global citizens who are protected globally. Because that would be the way to establish real peace, when every individual in every part of the world has rights that could be protected. Thank you very much. No.
Now, in pursuing the answer to the question of what are the things that we care so much about that we want global rules and institutions for, Ocampo evokes the Nuremberg trials. Admittedly, Nuremberg trials did not have solid legal footing. They evoked international customary law and things like vague statements like acts violating the conscience of humanity, but they were on a weak legal footing. Fortunately, International Criminal Court is on a far, far better legal footing and has far greater legitimacy. The Rome Statute establishing the International Criminal Court has been signed by more than 120 countries, and as we mentioned last week, those 120 countries span all divisions. So all divisions between North and South and East and West are not present in the International Criminal Court. Your first reading of the week is a short description of the establishment and the functions of the International Criminal Court. When the International Criminal Court was established, there was one crime that was not codified in detail, and that was crimes of aggression. These are crimes when a country attacks another country without due justification. And fortunately, in 2010, in Kampala Review Conference, crimes of aggression was codified and included in the mandate of the International Criminal Court. If we had not done that, I would argue that the International Criminal Court would be lacking in full legitimacy and would have fallen short of responding to the global demand for justice. And your second reading is about the place of crimes of aggression in the International Criminal Court. Now, as for your writing assignment for this week, I want you to describe the International Criminal Court, how it was established, and come up with an assessment of its performance to date. As usual, you have 500 to 1,000 words to make your case. Good luck.